And today we are doing a deep dive into what is basically the quintessential offbeat local story.
Oh, it really is. It starts with this completely strange moment at the public comment mic and just spirals from there.
Yeah, it spirals into this fascinating look at municipal budgets, the local nonprofit ecosystem, and, well, the unwritten rules of public disclosure.
Exactly.
So I am sitting here looking directly at the Granicus video feed from the Urban County Council's May 14, 2026 meeting.
Uh-huh.
And if you skip to exactly 16 minutes and 5 seconds in, you see a tall man in glasses step up to the podium.
Right. He sets down his printout and leans into the mic.
Yeah, and he introduces himself as Luke Box, a resident of District 10. And what he says over the next 90 seconds sounds, like the totally standard run-of-the-mill taxpayer critique.
Just local democracy in action on the surface.
Right. He is there to ask the city council to eliminate a specific $278,000 funding line that's earmarked for Cassie of Lexington. And he suggests taking that money and redirecting it to One Lexington.
Which is the city's gun violence prevention program, for you listening who might not know.
Exactly. But, and here's where it gets really interesting, the logo printed on the chest of his hoodie completely alters the context of everything he's saying.
It is a phenomenal visual contradiction.
It really is.
Because as he is standing there at the dais, making this impassioned plea to defund a prominent local nonprofit, he is wearing a charcoal hoodie with a bright orange word mark straight across the front that says, Broke Spoke.
Yeah, Broke Spoke. He even has his council visitor badge clipped right next to it.
Right next to the logo. But at no point during his time at the mic does he actually mention what that logo means.
Right. He never says it out loud.
No.
But if you look him up, his LinkedIn profile lists him as the shop manager for Broke Spoke Community Bike Shop,
which is a Northside Bike co-op.
And crucially, a 501c3 nonprofit itself.
Yeah, so the garment he chose to wear that night is in a way actively disclosing his affiliation.
Right, but his verbal statement into the public record leaves a massive glaring omission.
It creates this intense friction. I mean, you have a nonprofit manager quietly lobbying to defund a completely different nonprofit in his own city without ever explicitly stating his professional skin in the game.
Wow, yeah.
And to really understand the weight of what he's asking the council to do, we have to look past the rhetoric at the mic and dig into the actual financial mechanics of what he was critiquing.
Well, I have the paperwork sitting right here on the desk. Let's look at the argument he made first.
Okay.
The Box basically stood up and told the council that CASA, which, again, for anyone listening, stands for Court-Appointed Special Advocates. They represent abused and neglected kids in family court.
Right.
He says CASA doesn't need this $278,000 from the taxpayers, and his reasoning is that they have $6 million in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
He backs this up by claiming their caseload only grew about 9%, going from 626 kids served in 2018 to 685 kids today.
Yeah.
So his conclusion is basically, they're rich, they aren't growing that fast, so, cut the city check.
And when you pull up Casa's IRS Form 990 on ProPublica's Nonprofit Explorer.
The 990s, right?
Yeah, and just as a quick primer for you listening, a Form 990 is essentially the public financial report card that every tax-exempt organization is legally required to file every year.
Got it.
So when you look at that, you find that his math on the caseload is surprisingly dead on. It is exactly a 9.4% growth rate from 2018 to today. Casa's own published statistics confirm those 685 active cases.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck here, though. Because if I look at their most recent 990 from fiscal year 2025, it shows they brought in almost $2 million in revenue, like $1,972,630 to be exact.
Yes.
And they closed that year with over $6 million in net assets. And if they scale their assets nearly tenfold since 2018, like Box claims, shouldn't their bank account be completely flush with cash?
You think so?
Why do they still need the city's check to operate?
Well, what's fascinating here is that is the illusion of a top-line number on a tax form.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Box framed Casa's asset growth against their caseload growth to create this massive disparity. It's a highly effective soundbite at a podium.
Right.
But a Form 990 doesn't show you the strict legal conditions placed on that money. A huge chunk of those net assets are what we call restricted funds.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because saying an organization doesn't need its operating budget because it has high net assets, well, it feels a bit like looking at someone's home equity in their retirement account and telling them, hey, you're a millionaire on paper. You don't need your paycheck this week to buy groceries.
That is a perfect analogy.
But how does a restricted fund actually work in practice for a group like CASA?
Think of it like a legal straitjacket. Imagine a wealthy donor passes away and leaves CASA $2 million in their will.
Okay.
But the will explicitly mandates that this money can only be used to build, say, a new permanent training facility for volunteers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, CASA legally cannot touch a single cent of that $2 million to pay their electric bill, or hire a new staff member to manage a court case, or even buy office supplies.
Wow.
It just sits on their balance sheet, making them look incredibly wealthy while they still have to scramble to raise operating cash every single month.
So they could be asset rich, but totally cash poor when it comes to keeping the lights on.
Precisely. And there's another crucial layer here, which is organizational reserves.
Right.
Any responsible nonprofit that grows its revenue significantly has to build a proportional safety net. I mean, nonprofits face brutal grant cycle volatility.
What does that mean for them, practically?
Well, if a federal grant suddenly doesn't renew next year, CASA can't just walk into family court and abandon hundreds of abused children halfway through their legal proceeding.
Oh, man, of course not.
They are forced to hold massive reserves simply to ensure that a late check in the mail doesn't result in a child losing their court advocate.
Okay, so the $6 million isn't just a slush fund they can spend tomorrow. They actually rely on operating cash to do the daily work.
Exactly.
But that still leaves me with a huge question about the mayor's budget. Where did the city come up with $278,000 specifically?
It is a very specific number.
Yeah, it's such an oddly specific amount. It feels like someone just threw a dart at a board while drafting the FY27 budget.
Well, it didn't come out of thin air. We actually have the transcript from the May 27th, 2025 Budget Committee of the whole meeting right here.
Amazing.
Yeah, this is from the budget cycle a year prior. This $278,000 is actually the second year of a very deliberate council-requested catch-up allocation.
Catch-up allocation.
Yeah, Vice Mayor Dan Wu introduced it back in the spring of 2025.
Okay, meaning Lexington was falling behind somehow.
Yes. When a city evaluates how much to fund a social service, they use a mechanism called municipal benchmarking.
Benchmarking, right.
They look at the surrounding peer counties and calculate the per capita spending. So if neighboring counties are contributing, say, $2 per citizen to fund their local CASA programs, but Lexington is only contributing 50 cents per citizen, it creates a massive imbalance.
I see where this goes. If Lexington underfunds its court advocates compared to the neighboring counties, we essentially create a social service bottleneck in our own family court system.
Exactly. And the city recognizes that CASA is providing a service that the government would otherwise have to pay for entirely on its own.
Right, because it's the court system.
Exactly. In fact, CASA of Lexington isn't even a fully independent outside vendor historically. For 2 decades, it was literally a city Department of Social Services program.
Really? I know that.
Yeah, before it finally incorporated as an independent 501c back in 2003. Even today, its board of directors is a city-appointed body. They're listed directly on the lexingtonky.gov website.
Oh, wow. So they are really tied in.
Deeply tied in. So this $278,000 was just a mathematical adjustment to bring Lexington's financial commitment up to par with its neighbors, recognizing that CASA is deeply embedded in the city's own infrastructure.
And looking at the transcript from that May 2025 committee meeting where this money was first introduced, there was such a stark contrast to what we saw on the video feed with Luke Box.
It's absolutely.
During that 2025 meeting, Councilmember Dave Sivigny spoke up to thank the mayor for the funding allocation. And he leaned into his mic and said, point blank, quote, "I'm a CASA. I do know how important it is. It's really money that you can spend up front. It really has an impact to money down the road."
The transparency there is absolute.
It's night and day. I mean, you have a sitting council member using plain, unambiguous English to disclose his affiliation and his potential bias right on the public record before discussing the money.
Yeah.
And then a year later, at the exact same dais, you have a public commenter asking to slash that very same funding, but he relies entirely on the fabric of his hoodie to do his disclosing for him.
Which naturally makes you wonder about the organization printed on that hoodie.
Right.
We have Casa's tax forms and a clear picture of their multi-million-dollar footprint, but we also have the 990 for Broke Spoke sitting right here on the desk.
Yeah, so out of curiosity, while I was looking through CASA's numbers, I decided to pull up the public records for Broke Spoke Community Bike Shop.
Naturally.
Since they're both 501c, which again is just the IRS tax code designating a charitable tax-exempt organization, I wanted to see the comparison. And I'm struggling to even wrap my head around the scale gap here.
It is wild. When you look at Broke Spoke's fiscal year 2024 Form 990, you are looking at an entirely different universe.
Tell me about it.
Their total annual revenue was $87,206.
Okay.
They had $85,185 in expenses, and they closed the year with $72,408 in net assets.
I'm going to make sure you listening really catch this math because it stopped me in my tracks.
It's staggering.
Broke Spoke's entire annual operating budget, like every single dollar they spend to keep their doors open for a full year, is roughly 31% of the single line item that Box was standing at the podium asking the council to cut from Chiesa.
Yeah.
The financial asymmetry is just staggering.
It is a fundamentally different type of operation.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting, their officers, President Brad Flowers, Secretary Martha Tilson, Treasurer Sean Smith, they are all listed at zero compensation.
Wow, zero.
Zero. It is a true bare-bones grassroots effort.
It really is. And the asymmetry isn't just in the bank accounts. It is deeply rooted in the actual missions of what these two organizations do every single day.
Very true.
Let me paint the picture of Broke Spoke's world for you, because if you spend any time in Lexington, you know this exact vibe.
Oh, yeah.
They operate out of the Breadbox Redevelopment Complex over on West 6th Street.
A great spot.
It's this incredibly cool, sweat equity, hands-on wrenching shop. You walk in, and it's intrinsically tied to this very specific North Side lifestyle scene. It's located right next to the West 6th Brewing Tap Room. I mean, you can practically smell the hops from the bike stands.
It's a very specific cultural hub for that part of the city.
Completely.
Right.
It's right adjacent to the Coolevin Park Bike Polo Court. The Lexington Bike Polo League plays there religiously on Sundays and Wednesdays.
Yep.
So you have this entire cultural ecosystem. Folks are playing bike polo, they are grabbing a pint at the tap room next door, and they are utilizing the co-op to learn how to fix their own gears and keep their wheels spinning. It is an absolute hallmark of the North Side's gentrification over the last 15 years.
And this is where we have to balance the scales impartially, because we are looking at two vastly different concepts of community service.
Right.
Sex SA spends roughly $1,000 per child per year to relentlessly advocate for an abused or neglected kid navigating the severe trauma of family court. That $278,000 municipal line item Box wanted to cut, that doesn't just go into a void. It directly funds the advocacy for about 278 kids.
That's real impact.
It is. That is roughly 40% of their entire current caseload of 685 children.
So we have these two completely different worlds colliding at the microphone. On one hand, you have an organization that represents the practical bike mechanic wing of a thriving neighborhood lifestyle scene. On the other hand, you have an organization that physically stands up before a judge, representing the legal and emotional interests of foster children who have survived abuse. They are just not the same kind of social good.
Not at all. But because they share that exact same 501c3 tax designation, they are legally peers.
Right.
They end up bumping elbows in the exact same municipal sandbox, fighting for the attention of the exact same city council.
Which brings us to the core of what we're really looking at today, the rules of the podium itself. Did Luke Box actually do anything wrong by not stating his job title out loud?
Legally, not at all. The rules of public comment are actually quite minimal. As a resident, you get an unverified 3-minute slot. Box followed the absolute letter of the law. He walked up, he gave his name, and he stated his council district, District 10.
Right, District 10.
That is the entirety of what is required to speak. The council members sitting on the dais didn't ask him who he represented, and under the rules, they aren't required to ask.
So what does this all mean for how local government actually functions? I mean, we have a visual disclosure via a hoodie, but verbal silence. We have a taxpayer critiquing a massive nonprofit, but he himself manages a tiny one. Are these groups actually in competition with each other?
If we look at the bigger picture of the local nonprofit ecosystem, yes, they absolutely are.
Really?
Yeah. While his actions weren't irregular for a city council meeting, the visual disclosure he chose to wear was not operating in a vacuum. Both Broke Spoke and Casa operate in the exact same county. They function under the exact same tax-exempt status. And most importantly, they are drawing from the exact same finite Lexington donor base. Every dollar the city gives to one organization is a dollar that cannot be given to another.
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a city council member sitting up there on the dais looking down at the public comment mic.
Yeah, imagine that perspective.
You are listening to a resident make a seemingly straightforward, impassioned plea about municipal efficiency and bloated budgets. How does your perception of that argument completely shift when you realize, maybe hours or days after the fact, that you were actually listening to a nonprofit manager quietly lobbying to defund a totally different nonprofit operating in your own city?
It changes the entire texture of the critique. It really does. It ceases to be a simple taxpayer concern and reveals itself as a competitive ecosystem dynamic.
Exactly.
It highlights how organizations with vastly different scales and missions are forced to navigate the same political arena.
And that is exactly why taking the time to look at the Granicus video and actually pull the 990 tax forms is so vital.
Highly recommend it.
We started with what looked like a slightly weird 90-second public comment from a guy in a bike shop hoodie complaining about a court advocate program. But by tracking the paperwork, we uncovered this incredibly dense web.
We saw the mechanics of how municipal benchmarking actually works to prevent social service deserts.
Yep.
We saw the staggering disparities in operating scale between two local 501c3s, and we saw how the unwritten rules of public disclosure allow unspoken motives to hide in plain sight behind a legally compliant introduction.
It illuminates the hidden currents that drive local policy.
It really does. And I think it leaves you listening with a much broader question to consider.
What's that?
If we accept that different nonprofits provide entirely different metrics of social good, ranging from the cultural and community value of fixing bicycles in a gentrifying neighborhood to the life-saving value of protecting abused children in the legal system, how should a city council equitably measure those completely different realities when they are tasked with dividing up a single finite pie of taxpayer money?
Wow. That is the ultimate municipal puzzle. It's not just about who has the loudest voice at the mic, but who has the capacity to translate their mission into funding.
Exactly right.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Lexington's public records. It's a great reminder to always look a little closer at the video feed and to stay endlessly curious about the paperwork hiding right behind the podium.